Welcome back to Honest Conversations. During this year's United Nations General Assembly, one session stood out among the diplomatic gatherings. A historic event marking 80 years of the United Nations, titled The Role of First Ladies and Gentlemen Unite for Peace and Prosperity. The event was facilitated by the Global First Ladies Alliance and brought together regional networks of first spouses from around the world. It was a milestone moment, the first of its kind at the UN, spotlighting how first spouses can serve as essential partners in advocating peace, education, healthcare, and post-conflict recovery. The conversation was moderated by Dr. Cora Neumann, founder of the Global First Ladies Alliance and Montana State Senator for District 30, whose leadership in bridging soft and smart power continues to inspire global dialogue. Today, we explore what it means to lead with empathy and how influence, used for good, can unite nations in progress and human dignity. Dr. Neumann, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it.
Happy to be with you. Yeah.
Just to put it in context, I had the honor of meeting you. We connected briefly at the United Nations General Assembly, the high-profile week in New York, where your organization has put together this tremendous event at the UN headquarters for the first time that it happened, and you moderated it. And, my takeaway was that there were so many first spouses, high-profile folks, but it still felt intimate.
Appreciate that. So just to give a little background, so I'm the founder of the Global First Ladies Alliance, and we actually started as the African First Ladies Initiative because the reason, the inspiration for starting the organization was a group of First Ladies in Africa who had already organized themselves. And this was back in 2008, so many years ago. And they had been organizing for years around HIV prevention and coordination because of that, obviously, humanitarian and health disaster that was happening across the continent and across the world. And so there was a group of First Ladies who had already organized themselves. So I give them credit for inspiring our work. And they were looking for partnerships. So they had reached out to a colleague of mine and just, said we'd like to look into more partnerships in the US. I was a student at the time. I was actually getting my PhD at Oxford in international health and development, and I was working with refugee communities. So I was working in communities with extremely high need, where there was never enough leadership and never enough resources to help address the challenges that we were trying to face. And so I had just this light bulb moment where I thought, I'm a student. I don't have an organization. This is kind of out of nowhere. But if there are leaders at that level who want to do more with their position as First Lady, then let's help them, because I know on the ground, working with these communities in direct service, we need more leadership. We need more support. And First Ladies, I had never thought about them before, but realized they're in a phenomenal position to potentially support us and support their populations. And so I started the organization really, it was just an idea. And I reached out to the First Ladies offices and invited them to come and said, we're going to put you on stage, which they had never, usually they're talked at and told what to do, and expected that, they don't know what they're doing because they're women and wives, right? So there's a very sort of sexist nature to that role and assumptions. And so I said, we're going to put you on stage and you're going to tell us what your country needs, because that's what I knew from working in the field, was that the people who are facing the problem and dealing with it every day are the ones who have the best ideas for solutions. They're the ones we should be listening to. And so that's how it started. It was really this desire to support First Ladies, and that's really what we are, is a support network, a back office, a group that has been just helping First Ladies meet their potential, and really fully take advantage of their time in office. And so it's been 16 years, and it continues to grow.
That's incredible. And during that event, the speakers were so really eager to share their accomplishments, but also their plans. And they said,
Yes.
I remember one first lady was saying that I feel like mother of my nation because I hear
Yes.
what they need. So
Yep.
that really was the intention itself, to also maybe perhaps even open their eyes to what's in their ability to accomplish, right?
That's exactly right. And in many countries, especially in Africa, the first lady is referred to as the mother of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's actually
Wow.
something that we, sometimes I talk about my work with the first ladies as mothering the mothers,
Mm,
right? Like really trying to take care of and support them so that they can, have the most impact, right? And be able to play that role um, of mother and or of benevolent leader that is available to support. All of the issues that they focus on are social issues, right? And those are, as I said in the session, those are the problems that are the hardest to solve. Social
perhaps.
development issues are the hardest, and they're sort of laid at the feet of generally women, right? And without compensation or recognition, and so the first ladies are kind of, at the highest level of that kind of double standard around the work that needs to be done to help countries really develop and evolve.
And does your organization help them to put together maybe an agenda or plan, or even
Yes.
to know how to tackle this, and perhaps even select the issues that are prioritized?
Yes, exactly. So what we did after that first summit back in 2000, the first summit was in 2009, and my co-founder of the Global First Ladies Alliance is Nicole Bresky, and my co-founder of the African First Ladies Initiative back in 2009 was Anita McBride, who was the former chief of staff to Laura Bush. So I've had some incredible team members. And so after that first summit, we sat down with the first ladies and said, what do you need? What do you want? How can we support you? And they told us they need support for their staff and their teams. They wanted training for their teams, and they also wanted support really determining what was the best use of their time and energy in office. And so we have developed a curriculum. So we have basically like a manual or a curriculum for how to become an effective first lady,
Mm,
and they've developed it with us. And so our modules in that curriculum, there's a 10-step program basically. It focuses on everything from how to set up an office, right? And think about the critical roles that you need people to fill in that office, whether if you have a lot of first ladies don't have resources, and we can get into that if you'd like, first partners. Anything, if you only have 3 people or if you have 30, right? Like these are some of the core functions of your office, to, setting an agenda, which is very hard. And we can talk a little bit more about that as well.
yeah.
How hard it is when you don't have to do anything as a first
Mm,
lady, but
mhm.
you're expected to, and generally the first ladies in our program want to. And so choosing that focus area can be sometimes the hardest part of being a first lady.
Yeah.
So really working on that, setting priorities and determining what you might want to achieve. And then we also have deeper dives into specific issues like maternal health and cervical cancer and education and economic
Mm.
empowerment. So we bring policy experts and program leaders in to do more deep dives with the first ladies on issues that they want to learn more about, because they may have a background as a lawyer and all of a sudden health is really the issue they need to focus
Right.
on, or they feel compelled to focus on as a first lady. So how do we get them that,
Mhm.
that training? Yeah.
And also, I see some of them continuing this, right? Once they're,
Yes.
well, they were not in office, but once they're, let's say, out of the White House, Dr. Biden is continuing her initiative about women's health,
Yep.
which is very urgent. Do you still work with them, or is it sort of then a bit out of
Yeah.
scope?
Yeah, we do. So the 10th part of the 10th step in our curriculum
Mm,
is also, how to build a lasting legacy, or, how to continue your work and your vision after you've left office. And so, yeah, we have former first ladies that are, available and interested, engaged in our program. And we actually have a network that's developing of former first ladies, just like they have, the current first ladies and the former still need each other and they still need support. And last year, for the first time, we had a former and a current first lady attend together.
mm,
And they're from different parties, and their husbands
mhm.
ran against each other. And
Wow.
it just shows, and it showed such incredible goodwill and the power of first ladies to actually also engage in diplomatic relationships and democratic transitions. And we see that with the First Lady of Ukraine as well in terms of diplomatic relations. But yeah, so they continue their work, they're former First Lady for the rest of their lives, just like a president, right? And many of them either build some kind of institute. In the US, there's the library system, where, presidents build libraries and then have programming a lot of times out of that institution. And a lot of first ladies in other, especially in Africa and some other regions, will start a foundation. So yeah, that's one of the reasons it's so important when you set your agenda to make sure to choose something you truly care deeply about and have actual passion around. Because in order to maintain your energy and be effective, especially if you don't have a lot of resources, you need to care deeply. It needs to be something that's authentically important to you.
And you mentioned Olena Zelenska, and I'm Ukrainian-born American, so this was very eye-opening to me, because we, even in Ukraine, we haven't seen first ladies being active, and she really stepped up during the war. And this is, where somebody would shy away from leading causes, but she is, closing deals even, and just enlarging her footprint. And obviously she spoke at the event at Anga that you put together. Why was it important to meet there specifically at this time?
I think that, just referring back to Mrs. Zelenska, she actually started an organization to work with first ladies and gentlemen, before the war. She, inherently understood the power of the first lady, and started an organization before the war started. And so she had built a platform, I think, that was important and strong. And then when the war came, she was ready to continue to use and build that platform and continue to engage in, international, regional relations, regardless of the war, but also with the, having the war happening, it was an opportunity for her to build awareness about what was happening. And we just saw First Lady Melania Trump reach out to and connect with Putin, and call on him to return some of the stolen children. And so you see there that interaction, Zelenska's advocacy and building awareness about what was happening to the children and to the families of Ukraine, and then bringing in other first ladies like Mrs. Trump, and some other first ladies to help push for something, for a remedy to something that's obviously very, very tragic. So so I think that, and in terms of having the event at the UN, the first ladies are there, right? They're there often with their, and I say first partners, first ladies and gentlemen are there with the presidents and the prime ministers. And so it is an important time for these bilateral and multilateral meetings between countries. So we've always met alongside the UN since we started. And we used to have all of our programming alongside the UN, and now we have our academy actually in July, because it's so hard for first ladies and gentlemen during UNGA to take multiple days. Our academy is a week, right? And so we had to separate it from UN General Assembly so that they could come on their own and really have time to focus.
That's incredible. How I didn't miss on that. I'd love to, learn more and also report on that, because I think we need to learn more.
You're welcome.
And this is such a genuine, initiative. And you mentioned at the event, because a lot of speakers talked about soft power. And then I think you rounded up and you added soft and smart power, which added more significance to it. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So soft power, as you may have seen, is the informal power, right? So these are not elected officials, but they have a huge amount of influence over culture, over the priorities of the country, and over the attractiveness of their country to things like trade, right? So they have an impact, and there's wonderful research on this. that I can share as well about the impact of soft power, of leaders like the first ladies who are not in an elected or official position, but the way that their engagement with and leadership forms the perception, shapes the perception of that country in their region and worldwide. And so they have the ability to help make their country more attractive to trade, to lead on issues like peace and conflict resolution that may be outside the realm of economic and political policy and development, let's just say. And so there's actually really powerful research on how a first lady can shape the economy and the politics of a country, even though they're not elected leaders. And the smart side of it, the smart power, and I think that was one of the first ladies who actually mentioned the smart power, which I thought was great.
Diplomacy is often described as hard power and soft power. Our role lies on soft power, the power of empathy, trust, and human connection. But it is not opposed to traditional hard power. It complements it. And together they create what is known as smart power. And history has shown us many times where political dialogue struggles, humanity and compassion can open doors.
The smart power is, again, where do you choose to put your energy? To be able, because a first lady gets to choose what she focuses on. And so being really smart and strategic about what it is about your country that you make sure to portray on the global stage. And you have all of these roles as first ladies. You can be a champion, you can be a convener, you can be a coordinator, right? There's all of these ways that you can work internally and then also internationally to engage different, multi-sector players in your country. And so if a first lady decides that she wants to increase tourism in her country because that's an important source for economic development, she could invite global tourism experts and organizations to her country to tour the country, right? She could help open that sector up for business through her soft power, and it will have a hard impact in terms of economic development. And a lot of times that is more powerful than the soft power is more powerful because culture always supersedes politics. I think
Amen.
It just does, right? It does. Mm-hmm. And so you can have the greatest policies in the world, but if the culture doesn't follow, if the popular opinion doesn't agree or believe in it, it doesn't work. The things that we try to really elevate about this position is just really how powerful it is and how hard it is. It's a hard job.
It also comes with some type of criticism, which was very new to me. When I reported on the event, and I think also the event that followed where the first, the wife of the Prime Minister, Carney, Diana Fox Carney, spoke, and I got comments. We didn't vote for her. Why is she doing this? Was she then? I said, she's not using your budget or your vote. She's advocating for, in this case, bringing Ukrainian kids back to their parents and their homeland. And I think they also have to deal with such perhaps even feedback or negative feedback. Now, with this scope of social media, did you have to adjust maybe perhaps the 10 steps or the agenda itself to help them navigate that too?
Absolutely. And that's not new. It's more aggressive now. And we've had multiple sessions now with the first ladies based on their request on just even online safety. Not only for, there's the piece for them personally of, we're actually backsliding on women's political participation because of online threats and bullying and harassment.
Wow.
Yeah, it's serious. And so we talk about that not just for the first ladies, but for, women in general and political participation in general. And then, of course, children online, et cetera. But we have added that component to our, communications. It's often part of the communications training and portion of the curriculum. And we have an excellent example from the former First Lady, Monica Gangos of Namibia, who was also the president of the Organization of African First Ladies until her husband passed away, unfortunately. But she was the president and really tried to lead on this issue as well. And she shared an example of of actually fighting back against online harassment and publicly calling out the people who are trying to threaten, harass, discredit her. That does not always work. It does depend on your country, on your culture, on your position. But we've been able to give the example of, how do you shut it down? How do you react? But being a first lady is, you'll see, especially part of the reason I started the organization was because when I heard about this group of first ladies, I heard that they were interested in doing more with their position. I started looking into first ladies because I hadn't engaged with them before. And really what I came to is, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, right? Like we had Secretary Clinton, former first lady, who said she didn't want to bake cookies. She wanted to be engaged in, national policy. And of course she got slammed. I mean, the US is a very sexist country. Unfortunately, it really, and so she got really slammed, and then she got slammed for that. And then also, for her work to push forward a national healthcare agenda, which was so critical, and was then, implemented by President Obama. But she was criticized for, sort of, being out of her lane and trying to do too much. She's just a wife, and, she should be home baking cookies, right? Which is absurd. Right. And then you have first ladies who have, actually done a huge amount, but they are not getting credit for it. And so it's kind of like there's this double bind for first ladies, and it's sexism. It is, right? One of the things I asked in the session at the UN was, first, do we expect the first gentleman to do anything? Right. And one question I love to ask is, does anyone know who Angela Merkel's husband is? That would never be the case, right? It's because a man is thought, if you want to do something, great, but if you don't, I'm sure you have a career, don't worry. So first gentlemen if they don't do anything, nobody notices. If a first lady doesn't do anything, she's seen as lazy, she doesn't care, she's cold, she's heartless. So the double standard is there, just as it is in other sectors for women. And so that's why we're still the Global First Ladies Alliance. We certainly could add gentlemen, and we're so happy. Like we had Slovenia at that event, and he's phenomenal. So we do want to expand that and change that norm, but that's the reason that it is first ladies, because they really are the ones who need a lot of support. Yeah.
And to your point also, the first gentleman of Slovenia, I wanted to mention him. He said there is about 11 of us and only 4 are visible. Others are nowhere sort of to be found, but he attended all the meetings, and he spoke about that sexism that he felt when he attended the first meeting, that, oh, nobody does anything. Well, they want me just to sit there and drink tea or whatever. How did you perhaps change the agenda to fit the first gentleman, or do they fit already in just by selecting a topic and perhaps a different approach, female, male?
I mean, our program is really substantive, so anyone can fit in, right? It's not. It's. I feel like it's available. It's engaging and available and accessible to all, and we very much want first gentlemen to join us. And so, I think that, just speaking to our program, I think that it's very beneficial, because we talk about all of the parts of this position, and it is really valuable to have a man's perspective as well. He asked a question in one of the last meetings about or brought up the issue of really, kind of brass tacks benefits, right, for first partners. Do they get paid? Not that hasn't come up before, but I think that, those are sometimes the things where, a man can come in and say, this is not okay. It's not acceptable that there's no support and that you're expected to do all this work. Whereas a woman, like you said, will be criticized for taking money, right? But they are expected to serve the country. Right. So it's like, you can't, it's that. And so I think that there are opportunities for a male voice, because unfortunately, for better or worse, the voice of authority in the world is still a male's voice, which I hope to change, and I hope we can change that over time. But a male's voice does carry more authority. whether we like it or not. And so it's important to have those advocates as part of this work.
Absolutely. What do you feel the core values are now when the first ladies or gentlemen select their agenda? What are their priorities these days? Healthcare, education, or does it vary by country?
It does. It varies by country and by region. But I do the theme that continues to come through again, because these are the groups that tend to be neglected. And the first lady often, is looking at where they can fill in the gaps, which is another thing we advise. Like, where is there not enough leadership? But it's very important. Go there. That's where you're needed, and that's where you can make an impact. And so vulnerable communities, or really, unfortunately, women and children should not be considered vulnerable communities, but they are. And so that the focus on women and families, women and children tends to be a really just ends up being an area that first ladies care about, but also that needs more leadership. The thing that I've seen come up recently over the since COVID really is adolescent mental health and the future of this next generation. What is their work going to look like? What is AI and technology going to do to the workforce? And what is climate going to do to the future? Right. And so this coming as that's one of the wonderful, beautiful things about, I believe, women's leadership, in my experience, is that focus on the future. And how are we preparing the world for our children and grandchildren? And I do think that that's a really, really powerfully important focus that women often bring to the table as mothers and just as caregivers. And so I think adolescent mental health and the future of, with technology and climate change, the massive changes coming through both of those, how are we preparing the next generation? Because a lot of times we're just in reactive mode. We're not preparing. So that's a big area. I also think, first ladies, again, unfortunately, in many ways, are more important now than they were 5 years ago because of the backsliding on women's rights, because of the slide into authoritarianism that we are seeing in this country, in the United States, and countries around the world, where one of the first areas that comes under attack is women's rights and women's progress. And so all of a sudden, first ladies' voices and roles are more important than they were 5 years ago. And I wouldn't have expected that, right? I mean, I think everyone thinks this should become obsolete at some point because we have 50%, we have like at least a critical mass of women heads of state. And so this is not as things start, that's the dream. And so it balances out, but we're actually backsliding, and it's scary. There's some really, really scary things happening, in this country and around the world, especially, I could go on, but gender-based violence, trafficking, just cutting back on women's healthcare and women's rights. The list goes on. And so we need them more than we ever have.
And I think also some women deciding to be silent, I think that's even more so dangerous. If your country is getting into a dictatorship and becoming one and not speaking on that, that's I think, a precursor to any type of conflict, in which I wanted to put out also that, or point out that we have also so many conflicts too, and conflict recovery. The first ladies and gentlemen spoke at the event about that. Of course, Ukraine came as an example, but obviously we can talk about Palestine and Israel, same situation there. Do you help them navigate how to essentially meet the moment that way?
Yes, peace, conflict resolution and peace is something that has come up. And, there are multiple conflicts across the African continent. We're seeing the youth rise up across Africa and the Middle East. And women women tend to be the first victims of violence and conflict, women and children. They also have a really, really important role if they're given a seat at the table to resolve conflict. They have, I'm generalizing, but women have, because of their role as caregivers and mothers, tend to have really deep and important insights into how to forge peace. This understanding of human behavior, right? This understanding of what a population's needs are. Why are they dissatisfied? Where is the conflict coming from? They're really, really effective conflict resolution leaders when they're given the chance. And so elevating women's voices in that process is something that the first ladies have prioritized multiple times over the years. And we see we see first ladies in the Middle East. We had, Iraq and Lebanon at the meeting that we had at the UN. And then there was an African First Ladies Peace Initiative that started in Nigeria. Because there's a lot of civil conflict, and obviously we see what's happening in Sudan. I mean, there are, and what's happening in Afghanistan. I mean, it's just unbelievably scary. And the world has been really silent about it. And so how can we mobilize women in many ways? I mean, you look at the history in Liberia, where the women were the ones to stop the conflict, right? But it is scary and it is dangerous. And so I think women's silence is often also, it can be a sign of like extreme aggression against them, right? Or fear. So that means that the women who have agency, hopefully, are doing something when they can, because so many women end up, going silent or going underground because they're being threatened, or because there is violence, threatened or active against them.
And I mean, just talking about the United States recently, I can see it from journalistic point of view. You think twice what you say and when you say, but then you think also in sort of, I think long term, does it matter if I say it? Yes, it does. Will I face criticism? Yes, I will, but I will face it regardless. And then you kind of decide for yourself, but yes, you face so much hatred from all kinds of levels. It's not just the online community, but, also the limitation of access to information. And that's, I feel it's more on the female end. That's where we are being cut out of conversations or meetings. That's, it's happening. So we have to speak about it, or it's normalized, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because part of an authoritarian or fascist regime is to control women.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a part of the agenda. That's always a part of the agenda. And so, and to try to, kind of repeal progress that's been made. And so that is, but how do you do that in a way that doesn't put you directly in harm's way? And there are people who will put themselves in harm's way, who have that character and that ability and that strength. And so when they do, the goal, like ideally we're getting behind them and supporting them and amplifying those who are taking a stand and being brave. But that is the fear of, recrimination and revenge really is what I think we're seeing in these cultures right now. That there is this move towards, if you're my enemy, we'll indict you, we'll put you in jail. So it's not just a intimidation; it's like a threat of real repercussions. And I think that's very, very dangerous, because when you lose freedom of the press, I mean, that's one of the last guards against fascism.
And it's no longer what I feel is difference of opinion. It's either you have the loyalty or you don't, and then you're with us or against us. Very straightforward approach, very fast also. But we spoke about the global affairs, and then we kind of talk about US. So my question to you is, how do you manage this regional leadership and also global, right? As a Montana state senator and also the founder of such global organization.
Me personally.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, the pillars of leadership and authority in the United States, right? And it's somewhat different in each country, but more or less the same. You have the courts, you have the, Congress, you have the presidency here. We're a presidential system. You have the military, and you have the states. And those are the sort of, those are the pillars of infrastructure in the government, right? Then you have the press, right, and education and, systems that are directly engaging the public. But those are the pillars of the foundation of the governmental structure that we have in our country. And so I am a state senator representing, the state of Montana, my home state, and states. And, we're not a federal republic, but we are a federalist, right? We are a country where the states have an important role, important, power to set their. I mean, obviously, there's areas where we have to, be aligned with the federal. And we all abide by the Constitution. That's the other challenge we're seeing is people defying the Constitution, right? Leaders defying the Constitution and ignoring law and order. But we have, the state has a really, really important role in interpreting and implementing federal and then, of course, state law. And so I'm grateful to be in this position. I think that states have a really important role right now in what's happening, in the changes that are impacting our country. And then, so that's my person, and I work in healthcare. I serve in the state Senate. And then, of course, globally, I work with First Ladies. So it's really, I feel really grateful that I can play that local state level role and work globally, because I do believe it's important that no matter what level of government you're in the United States, that you maintain relationships with allies, not just across the country, but around the world. And that we want to share our commitment to democracy, right? And so I think that it's important to build, to maintain those alliances and relationships across the country, but also around the world.
It's incredible. I watched several of your videos running for Senate, and I learned your story and the healthcare and why it all matters to you. But looking forward for your organization, but you personally, what gives you hope? I know it's off the cuff question, but this is what I'm genuinely interested in, because I'm suffering with this.
Yeah, I think we are all suffering. Not all, but many of us.
Yeah.
I think what gives me hope is, I think that every crisis is also an opportunity for us to remember what our ideals are. To remember and forge, remember or find our allies, strengthen our alliances, but also find new allies, and to remember what it is that matters. What are we fighting for? Because I think that sometimes, and especially in this country, people have gotten comfortable. We haven't had war on our own soil. We have had, steady growth more or less over economic growth over a 200-year period. And I think there's a lot of complacency that has given rise to where we are right now. There's complacency on one side, and then I think that there are also other dynamics that I could delve into. But I don't know how deep you want to go into the weeds of why we are where we are. But I think that what happens in a moment like this is that you realize but how dangerous it is to take freedom for granted.
Right.
And to take, economic stability for granted. That it's a reminder that we have to reinvest in these systems all the time. And that complacency is not, it's not neutral. Inaction is not neutral. It is an action, right? It's like inaction in the face of justice is, one of the most dangerous forces, right? That inaction is dangerous, and that complacency is dangerous, and that we need to be proactively investing in our systems, and in our relationships locally, nationally, and internationally, because we are all in a shared agreement. When you're in a democracy, and in any society or culture, you are in this unspoken shared agreement that you will treat each other with, respect and dignity, or at least, the very bare minimum of not doing harm to others, right? And you've all agreed to that in an unspoken way. And when that gets turned upside down, when that gets threatened, you remember that maybe you've taken that for granted, and you have not invested in connecting with your neighbors, in being involved in your local organizations, in making sure that you're part of getting out the vote, whatever it is. This is a very scary wake-up call. And humans go through this cycle, right? We have peace and prosperity, and then we have conflict and a rise in authoritarianism and oppression. And so, I think that, again, I think seeing it as a wake-up call and as opportunity to reinvest in the structures that matter to you, that's where I find hope, especially in that local action and that local connection. Because that's where the action always takes place, is at the local level.
And we also need to understand that we're more alike than we're different, right? So when we learned from perhaps even other First Ladies initiatives, how they managed to go through conflict, I think we are so above of learning from nations that we think we are superior to for some reason. I think really sharing those stories and just learning by example.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, I think that First Ladies call our organization and our work a sisterhood, right? They come together to share their challenges and their successes, and that's what we need to do right now. I mean, what are the mechanisms and opportunities when you're facing this kind of conflict and rapid change and really affront on our rights? I mean, in this country, right, our rights are being challenged and taken away. What have the other countries done? What have other communities done? How can we learn from each other,
right,
and help each other get through this?
Right,
because humans are alike all over the world, right? They have similar tendencies and similar desires, right, for good and bad.
And what lastly, what I learned from me is to avoid getting numb, right? When we're so bombarded with so much negativity, so many rules breaking, so many things where you feel like you're in Twilight Zone because you see one thing, you hear another thing, and then you're like, it all doesn't make sense. What helps you not to get numb to this, not to normalize this? So I just hope for people to learn from you who is bombarded with this.
Yeah, well, I have found in the last couple of years, we've had some great stories on our work. And I think that people have been drawn to the Global First Ladies Alliance and our work because we have found a way outside of the normal structures and the expected pathways to leadership. We found a creative way to engage change makers and leaders. And I think that that's what this moment requires. Where have you not looked to find an unexpected, hero or supporter or ally? How can you get out of your comfort zone and get out of what is expected of you, to come together to create change, to build something new, to come up with new ideas, to build new alliances? And so I think that just meeting and sitting together with the First Ladies and hearing about what they're going through and hearing them share with one another these ideas. I mean, having, the First Ladies of Latin America met the Ukraine, connected with the Ukraine First Lady through our event. And there hadn't been established relationships between those regions. And before you know it, Guatemala and Belize are visiting Ukraine, right? And giving new energy and life and ideas and allyship, where you might not have expected it. And so I think in order to not get numb, it's hard. I mean, I understand being numb and sort of checking out is also a coping mechanism. Like, I think people have to be careful not to be too hard on themselves right now, because there are forces outside of our control. This is a pendulum. This is a swing, a historical swing towards authoritarianism and oppression, right? And we are in that cycle as human beings. And so, acknowledging that it's okay to feel down and to feel numb and to feel helpless, that's part of this. But when you have the ability to come out, and I think creativity is the pathway out of that. I think finding out, what excites and inspires you, and then following that. Do you like to build things? Do you want to go out and start something new? Do you want to go out and be a part of a local movement where you join other people and you kind of come together to take action on a specific issue? Are you somebody who likes to research and write and share your ideas online? Whatever it is, like, find that thing that you're good at, that you enjoy, that it sparks your creativity, that you can engage in. Just one thing. It can be one issue or one method. And I think that can often, break you out of that, that feeling of helplessness, because it doesn't have to be some huge grand gesture. You could join a local board or, volunteer. I mean, really those getting out of yourself and out of your head and offline, especially getting offline, I think is critical.
Yeah. And meeting people in person. That's,
Exactly.
for me, that's what I enjoyed at ANGA. Although, yes, politics and everything, but seeing people there, seeing first ladies, how excited they were to speak. When, even though I understand the excitement was maybe different at the General Assembly when the leaders were speaking, very different atmosphere, but this was really uplifting.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you were there. Yes. And that's exactly right. Getting out and connecting, finding a way to connect and create and be engaged, reminds us of the power we do have. You may not be a head of state, or a first lady, but you have the ability to change your own community at whatever level that you can.
Absolutely. And speaking of connection, how people can connect with Global First Ladies Alliance? How can they support perhaps their events or newsletters, socials?
Yes.
How can they do it?
Yep. So if you go to our website, which is down here, thank you for that banner, gfla.org, you can sign up to our newsletter, and we share updates of our, events. We meet, so we have a First Ladies Academy in the summer every year. Then we have events around the UN General Assembly, but we also have meetings in between. And so we would love you to sign up and stay updated. We are also a nonprofit, so we're always looking for support for someone who may want to help sponsor our work. It is, it's always challenging, especially in this climate, to raise the funding that we need. But we are happy to make this program available to all First Ladies, and we do that by raising the funding to cover the program itself. First Ladies cover all of their own expenses, but we raise funding to actually put on the programming. And so we're always looking for partnerships for, sponsors, funders, but also if there's an issue area that's aligned with the First Ladies and what they focus on in health and development, and you'd like to partner with us, we would love that. We welcome all. And so, thank you for that opportunity to share.
No, absolutely. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. I think this was more profound than I even expected. And thank you for being so honest. It's rare. Authenticity and honesty is so rare. I'm really grateful.
Well, I'm so happy that you invited me on your show. Congratulations on having this platform. I think it's really, really important. And I look forward to staying in touch, and hopefully we'll have some interest in our program from your viewers and can continue the conversation.
Thank you. See, leadership doesn't always happen on the front lines of politics. Sometimes it begins in partnership, compassion, and service. My conversation with Dr. Cora Neumann, founder of the Global First Ladies Alliance and Montana State Senator, reminds us that diplomacy guided by empathy can create lasting change. The work of GFLA shows that when influence is shared and purpose leads, peace and prosperity are possible. Thank you for joining Honest Conversations. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and stay honest.